All right, success. So I'm Stacy Heilman, Associate Professor and Associate Vice Chair for Research in Department of Pediatrics at Emory University. I'm really delighted to welcome you all here today and thank our sponsors, including the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Georgia Tech and Emory University, as well as the NIH and specifically the Point of Care Technologies Research Network that sponsors our ACME POCT grant. Talking about the ACME POCT specifically, we are the Atlanta Center for Microsystems Engineered Point of Care Technologies, where we're focused on the development and translation of microsystems engineered technologies, including microchipped enabled devices such as MEMS-based sensors, microfluidics, and smartphone-based systems. This next infographic just shares with you a little bit of our ecosystem. I'm a co-investigator in Core 4, which is shown here in the green, but I'm going to direct your attention just for a moment to the blue and to the peach, which are our technology development core, which is where the inventors and the engineers mostly live. And the peach is the clinical translational validation core, which is where the clinicians oftentimes live. And it's really this center part where the magic sort of happens in terms of the inventions happening and the technologies being developed, as well as the clinicians pointing out what their clinical needs are at any given time. And then what our job is in the green here, the technology training and dissemination, is really to make sure that we're disseminating our best practices as it relates to inventions, as well as what the clinical needs are and how you approach those properly. The other thing that we do in the green is sort of this matchmaking service, if you will. When a clinician has a clinical need, we want to make sure that they're connected to the engineers and the inventors who can really help them develop out something that's going to suit their needs. And then on the flip side, when something has been developed, we want to make sure that it not only works in vitro in the lab, but also in vivo in actual clinical population. So real quick, I'm just going to give you a high level. Today's agenda is super rapid pace. We have a ton packed in. In a moment, we're going to introduce Dr. Wilbur Lamb, who's one of the PIs of the ACME POCT, introduce our speakers. But just to give you a high level, it's super rapid pace. We have speaker one, about a 15-minute presentation, 10-minute moderated Q&A. Then we'll have speaker two, 15 minutes, 10-minute moderated Q&A. The important thing for you to know is before the end, I'm going to distribute a survey in the chat. We really want you to click on that. We want to get a couple of really important pieces of information from you, including if you would like to continue the conversation and speak to these speakers after today's session or anyone else in our system. So please make sure you respond to the survey, tell us who you are, tell us what you want to learn more about. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wilbur Lamb to tell us about today's speakers.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you to everyone for joining us. And thank you to my colleagues, Drs. Kevin Meyer and Greg Martin, who will be mediating the Q&A. But our stars of the show today are really luminaries in their field, both of them. So Professor Farouk Ayazi is an IEEE Fellow and Regents Entrepreneur at Georgia Tech in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. He has really pioneered the development of microchip-based sensors, and in particular, he'll be talking about the really tiny microphones that he's been able to develop and use them for cardiopulmonary applications. And then Dr. Hong Yo, who is also a luminary in his field in terms of wearable technologies, especially flexible bioelectronics. He's really pioneered a lot of the clinical applications within this field, and he is a Woodworth Faculty Fellow within the Woodworth School of Mechanical Engineering, as well as the Coulter Department of Biomedical Engineering, where I also sit. So I'm a professor of biomedical engineering and a professor of pediatrics, and one of the principal investigators of the ACME POCT, along with Dr. Greg Martin and also Dr. Oliver Brand, who heads the Institute for Electronics and Nanotechnology at Georgia Tech. And I would say that it's these sessions like this that are really a testament to what we have in our Atlanta ecosystem here, having all three institutions, Emory University, Georgia Tech, and Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, all aligning together to foster development of point-of-care technologies, specifically from the microsystem space. So with that, I'll introduce and let our first speaker go ahead. Farouk, go for it.
Thanks so much, Wilbur, for this nice introduction. Assuming everyone can hear me fine. And
Yes.
can also see my slides.
Yes, you're good to go.
Yep.
Awesome. And thanks for inviting me to this seminar series. It's a pleasure to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing at Georgia Tech for a long time on developing acoustic contact microphone chips for cardiopulmonary health informatics. I wear two hats. I am a professor at Georgia Tech in the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and I'm also the founder at Aesthetics Microsystem, which is commercializing the devices that are developed in my lab, specifically related to the cardiopulmonary health. So I'm going to start with this need statement and going after mechanoacoustic signals that are emanated from the body. A wealth of information exists in those mechanoacoustic signals. As you can see on the right-hand side, different organs will submit frequencies in different range. You can have your heart sounds going from, the seismocardiogram signals, and the ballistic cardiogram signals are very low frequency from DC to 20 hertz. And then you have the phonocardiogram signals, the heart sounds going from 20 to 200 hertz of bandwidth. The long acoustics, though, they're much fainter in intensity and harder to detect, and can go up to about 6 kilohertz. And then if you look at things like joints, they can have acoustics all the way to about 20 kilohertz or so. So next generation wearables, they need to provide more information about the health of heart and lung, and do it accurately and comprehensively. What I mean by comprehensively is that they need to go beyond what ECG and a stethoscope examination can offer. They need to enable early detection of diseases and help clinicians in the management of those diseases, and ultimately enable telehealth by enabling remote patient monitoring. So what is needed is a high degree of acoustic sensitivity and bandwidth at very low cost, which is currently unavailable in the low profile sensors that are available in the market. Those sensors are mostly developed for the smartphone market, and they have poor sensitivity and bandwidth. They have the right profile, or they could have the right profile, but they lack significantly on the sensitivity and bandwidth. So we are after developing a wearable heart and lung monitor, and we are all aware of the toll that cardiovascular diseases are taking on our health system, costing more than $200 billion per year. The largest causes of death from CVD, from cardiovascular diseases, are heart disease and stroke. And one of the early applications that we have identified is to screen for pneumonia in patients that are suffering from a stroke, or other types of patients that are, for example, suffering from some degree of dementia. The risk of pneumonia after a stroke can be very high as 22%. And the current screening methods of the stroke patients for pneumonia are labor intensive and ineffective. Basically, physicians, they need to go visit the patient at the bedside and do a stethoscope type of examination, or do multiple X-ray examinations. And statistically, 10% of the deaths within 30 days after a stroke are attributable to pneumonia. And that accounts to about 80,000 deaths per year. So if a wearable lung monitor was available, we feel like this can be tremendously helpful in management of pneumonia and hospital-acquired pneumonia. And when we talk a wearable lung monitor, think about a Holter monitor that is just monitoring the lung and heart from an acoustic standpoint. It can be added to an Holter monitor A schematic of such a system is shown in the bottom right. You can see that the device can have multiple sensor heads that are placed in not just the front of the chest, but also the backside. And there is a hub unit that collects those data and transmit it to a central unit in the clouds or in a computer. So we have a breakthrough acoustic sensor technology that is based on microelectromechanical systems. So this is an acoustic contact microphone chip. You see a picture of it on the top right. Is only 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter in size and is hermetically sealed. So it can be basically inserted into clothing and washed or sanitized as needed without any sort of adverse effect on the device itself. It is not sensitive to ambient acoustic noise, which is a huge benefit when you're using it in hospital settings as well as outpatient settings. There are a variety of noise sources, as you can imagine, in the environment that can affect, for example, if you are just developing a digital stethoscope, you will be sensitive to the acoustics coming from ambient. So it is important to reject those acoustic noise and not be sensitive to it at all. There is no skin electrode needed. It works through clothing. So you just need mechanical contact with the skin, but not an electrical contact with skin. And what makes this device, which we call it ACM, short for acoustic contact microphone, so sensitive is its extreme microgravity level sensitivity in a wide bandwidth. So we have a micro G accelerometer that has an acoustic bandwidth going all the way to 10 kilohertz. So that can enable accurate detection and quantification of heart and lung acoustic sounds, plus the breathing pattern of a subject. And so think about fingerprinting your heart and lung in an acoustic way, and think about what kind of information can be extracted from that. We're hoping to provide all of that to physicians and to people. And we believe that our ACM data, especially if you have a multi-point system that is combined with artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques, provides much more valuable data than a stethoscope. So let me jump into the device itself. So this is a picture of Stetex, the startup company spin-off of my group is developing. So in the bottom right, you see the MEMS sensor on a small board that is the size of a penny, and next to it is an application-specific integrated circuit that converts the output of the MEMS device into a robust digital signal. So those tiny boards are encapsulated in white coating materials that are suitable for inserting on the body, and then they have cables. At this point in time, the data is transferred via a cable, a flexible cable, to a hub board, a multi-channel data acquisition unit that has the ability to interface with 12 channels. Now, the 12 channels is the kind of extreme that, if people really want to have a very comprehensive data collection, they may want to use that. We envision not needing more than 5 or 6 at the end of the day, but again, is application dependent. And you can see now the type of signals you can get out of your device. If you mount it on the chest, on the heart, you see the S1, S2 sounds being mounted on top of the breathing rate, breathing pattern of a subject. So those signals are easily picked up. And we have now looked at a couple of applications on the cardiac side. The first one is a congestive heart failure. I guess a lot of people know that ventricular gallop sounds, or also known as S3 heart sounds, are known to be produced in heart failure patient, and especially if the heart, even if the patient is released from the hospital, as soon as there is a decompensation, you would see those easily missed S3 sounds showing up on our ACM signals. And the nice thing about it is that you can also look at the breathing pattern of the patient. And in particular, if you detect a shallow breathing pattern and an S3 sound together, that is an indication of a decompensated heart. can signal the physician that the patient needs attention, or can signal the patient to go see a doctor. The other application, I'm going to just quickly go over some of these applications. It's in the valvular heart disease and aortic stenosis. So we are able to capture paradoxial splitting of S2 sounds in aortic stenosis patients. So what you can see here on this slide, on the left-hand side, you see the signals of S1 and S2 from a healthy subject. So if you look at S2, there is a distinct S2 that has usually an A2 and a P2 wave that correspond to the aortic and pulmonic valves action. And in a healthy subject, the A2 is typically much larger than P2 and comes before that in the time domain. Now, it is known that with aortic stenosis patients, you actually get the reverse behavior, which is known as the paradoxial splitting. And you can see on the right-hand side, we see the murmurs that are being detected from these type of patients, but you can still get some distinct S2. And if you measure these sounds over a long period of time, you will see occasions where P2 and A2 are flipped. Basically, P2 comes before A2, and this has been known academically, but so far no wearable device has been able to measure it. So this table now shows how effective this technique is, that you'll see that patients 1 through 10 are healthy patients. Some of them are pretty young. Some of them go up to about 69 years old, and you see that they show a time split that is normal, that is always positive in the range of 15 millisecond to about 63 millisecond. And number of paradoxial splitting that is recorded is almost zero, with except to a few cases that you see in the middle. For example, a 55-year-old patient with a BMI of 32 showed 3 paradoxial splitting, but the heart diagnosis was normal, as was diagnosed by physicians. But people with mild aortic stenosis or severe aortic stenosis, they all show these paradoxial splitting, with the severe cases showing more frequent paradoxial splitting. So this was pretty nice. Now let me switch quickly to pulmonary acoustics. And the advantage again is that if you place the device in the back of your chest, you see that you can easily capture the respiration cycle while looking at the low frequency chest wall motion. If you do a bandpass filter, you can see the inhalation and exhalation sounds of the lung picked up by the ACM. Now, recently, we've been able to detect wheezing from asthmatic patients and benchmark that recording from ACM with the echo stethoscope. So in the bottom right, you see the zoom-in view of the recordings of the echo stethoscope and how well it matches the ACM match data that is acquired. And on top of that, again, the ACM is detecting the shallow breathing pattern of the patient. Now, nothing is more powerful than listening to what you can get out of an echo, and then what our device is able to record out of an asthmatic patient at Grady Allergy and Asthma Center. So take a listen. The first one is the recording from echo, and then the next one is the ACM. I'm going to play it. So this was the recording of an echo. You could hear clearly the wheezes, but not necessarily distinguish if there were inspiratory or expiratory wheezes. Now with ACM, we do get to distinguish those. So as you could see, there were wheezes during the inspiration and expiration, which echo was not able to capture. So this was very exciting to our collaborators. And then we quickly moved to see if crackles due to pneumonia can be captured with ACM. And we were mostly interested in faint signals, faint crackle signals. So take a listen now, the recording from an ACM. And it is faint, so you have to pay attention. You see the popping sound. obviously these are very faint, but echo is also picking up very faint signals. So this is the measurement from echo now. Take a listen. Might be very hard to hear, but it's the same recording from the same patient. So hopefully we're able to pick up some of that. But the point here is that the crackles are measured successfully with the ACM at a better quality than what you can get out of echo. And the end of this recording, you could actually hear some background noise from the physician. So the crackles are and the bronchial sounds are both measured with high quality out of the ACM. These are some images of the signals in the time domain. If you need to get more information, we have published a paper on this. I'd be happy to share that with you. But I just want to quickly go to the ambient noise rejection demo, which is, again, I know is very important to a lot of people and a lot of applications. So we have a quick demo showing the comparison of an ACM with an earbud and Apple AirPods. And kind of at the presence of the background noise, you will see that an earbud would pick up everything, but you know, the ACM is not picking up any of that. So I just need a minute.
Stanley was not a bad kid. He was innocent of the crime for which he was convicted. He'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
This is the
it was all
recording
because
from
of his
the
no
AirPods
good, dirty,
Pro.
rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather.
The Nautilus
Stanley was not a bad kid. He was innocent of the crime for which he was convicted. He'd just been in the wrong place.
And now I'm going to switch to the recording from the ACM, which is going to pick up your the speech without any of the background noise.
Stanley was not a bad kid. He was innocent of the crime for which he was convicted. He'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was all because of his no good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather. Stanley was not a bad kid.
So now Chris is talking in the background, and none of that is being picked up.
He'd just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was all because of his no good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather.
Now Greg would stop talking, and you can still not pick up any of the Chris's conversation in the background. So that is the demo about rejection. So let me conclude my talk. Low power ACM chips and acoustic IMUs that have more degrees of freedom than just being a unidirectional microphone, they can provide new valuable information about the health of the cardiopulmonary system. They're insensitive to ambient sound and capture mechanical motion as well as acoustics. So you can get the respiration pattern and also determine the position and physical activity of the patient. We are actively looking for collaborators to expand the use cases of the ACM. So if you have any use case in mind, I hope that we can discuss it after this talk, and also feel free to get in touch with me via email. And I'd like to also acknowledge the funding that has been coming into this project from DARPA, from ARL, NIH, Georgia Research Alliance, and Acme Pope. With this, I know I'm over time by a couple of minutes. I'm going to stop, and sorry about going over time a little bit.
Farouk, that was fantastic. And hi, everybody. This is Kevin Marr. I'm one of the cardiac ICU docs. And I think first thing I can take away from your presentation is I could probably throw away my stethoscope because that's going to be so antiquated. But really sort of remarkable technology, and just sort of waiting to see what applications both in the adult world as well as, you know, the pediatric world. And so before I start with questions, I would like everybody out there, if you want to come up with any ideas, just put them in the chat about potential uses of this technology, and we can discuss those further. Farouk, you talked about you're looking for collaborators. Are there any specific areas that you want to concentrate in? It sort of seems like a cardiorespiratory application, but I suppose there are other potentials.
Yes, we are working with a few people already from Emory, Kevin Martin, Lorenzo DiFrancesco, and Wendy, Dr. Wendy So I think we are all set from on the pulmonary side. We would like to get more collaboration on the cardio side, and especially we were quite excited to kind of see these type of results out of the ACM by applying some not as complex algorithms and signal processing techniques. So we know that the current standard of practice is an echocardiogram for detecting aortic stenosis and other type of valvular heart disease. And it's hard to get people to come to the hospital to do an echocardiogram, being an active type of screening technique. Now, what if we have these type of patches that you can use at home, and the data can be easily transmitted and can provide valuable information? Now, we've just looked at, I think we're just scratching the surface here. There are a lot more complications related to heart and different forms of the valvular heart disease that we would like to take a look at and kind of see if we can differentiate a mitral regurgitation from an aortic stenosis. So these are all areas that we would love to find more collaborators on the cardio side.
Right. And then what are your thoughts or your expectations? Do you see more applications in the hospital or at home, or is it wide open?
I would say it's wide open. I think before we are able to go to at-home applications, there are a number of things that need to be sorted out, right? So we have to establish the efficacy of the patch. So it's going to just take longer. But I feel like just as a simple monitoring device, especially I talked about that long monitor for people that are at high risk of developing pneumonia. They are going to be already mocked up, those type of patients in the hospital. Some of them are in the ICU. They are mocked up for ECG. So adding a few more patches, even if it's wired, is not going to be a huge burden. And now imagine the type of benefits you're going to gain from it by being able to do a monitoring of lung in addition to heart, and being able to detect the onset of any type of crackles or bronchial sounds that are caused by pneumonia or other types of complications that may jeopardize their life.
All right. Farooq, we have a question from Uzma that can the device be used for identification of different types of pediatric heart disease like tetralogy of Fallot, double outlet right ventricle, just the various variety of different diseases that we see?
That's really wonderful to get these type of questions. We don't know. We would love to actually do those type of studies. What I can share with you is that the device has a lot of sensitivity to be able to detect these really weak signals from people that have high BMI. So on this table, you see the BMI of the last patient is 33, pretty high BMI. And we are still able to detect the STU splitting, paradoxical STU splitting. So we have the ability to use the devices in an array and locate them on, different places that might be enabling further the time of flight measurements that are needed in some of these applications. We think that we do have the ability to create an acoustic fingerprint of heart as well as lung. The question is, then up to the clinicians to kind of make sense of the data and guide us through our sort of creation of these patches and the system that they want to put on a subject. So I would love to take that offline, and I see a lot of possibilities.
Right. If for the clinicians that are listening, and we were thinking about potential collaboration, how much time do you need from us?
Good question. The more, the better. And what I can tell you is that it does make a huge difference when we have more time from the clinicians. These type of data collection, especially at the earliest stages, need a lot of care in placing the sensor. The sensor does have some placement sensitivity. So those are all the type of things that we would love to research further. I would love to say if we can get equivalent of half a day a week, but not on a continuous basis. So doesn't have to be every week. If every other week during the month would be great. So one day a month, I would say, is going to go a long way, but we're just going to spread it across a couple of weeks in different days. Right now, the best collaborations that we've had are a result of people putting as much of that 1 day a month into the project.
Right. Yeah, my experience has been the same, that it really, for projects to move forward, clinicians need to be able to have sort of an ongoing amount of time that can be spent, with the engineers. Actually, Greg Martin, question for you. Greg, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And Farouk, nice to see all the progress and really cool stuff you're doing. I wonder, particularly when you described or showed how you can isolate the signal and really avoid all the background noise, which makes me wonder in more complex environments, and my bias would be in the ICU, in the intensive care unit, where you've got a lot of background noise, but even in the emergency department, ambulances, other places where there's probably a lot of other background. And I wonder if you've thought about that or done any work in those areas already.
Yeah, excellent point. And that's exactly what I was hoping to highlight, that in those places that you do have a lot of background noise, none of that is going to get picked up by this device. And I was hoping that demo at the end would highlight it. Of course, the patient's talking would get picked up, and you're not expecting the patient to be speaking during that time of examination. But other than that, anything external, so the ventilator machine making a lot of noise in the background, that's not going to get picked up. But of course, the flow of air into the person's lungs would get picked up, right? But none of the ventilator noise in the background should get picked up. We haven't really done a study yet, but just the nature of how the device works is not a membrane microphone, is basically a vibrometer. And by virtue of being a vibrometer, is not sensitive to, acoustics coming from air, traveling through the air, because there is no mechanism to collect that signal and convert it into an electrical signal.
Yeah, it's cool. It seems to open up some more opportunities. I like that.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Farouk, I have a probably harebrained idea, but what about, would you consider any fetal applications? Would you be able to use this to detect fetal movement? We do a thing called a biophysical profile. And so mothers, expecting mothers have to come into the physician office, but especially for high risk, can they assess fetal heart rate and that type of sort of application?
Absolutely. We would love to look into that application. And, the pictures that I showed of the system, is not that old. So this system has been a work in progress. And now we are in a position that we can launch a lot of the studies. And we would love to actually look at more of, pediatric applications and, neonatal applications. And we feel like we have the right sensitivity levels, and the fact that we can place multiple sensors on a subject, I think that's going to give us the possibility of look at the collective responses of these sensors, time of flight, type of calculations and imaging techniques. And we would love to look into that application.
Yeah, we certainly all should get in contact with ideas, and I think we are going to move on to our next.
Sure. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Hong, you can go ahead and share your desktop now.
All right,
Yes.
ready?
Yes, ready.
All right, can you hear me? Can you see the screen?
Yep, all systems are go.
Perfect.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Nice meeting you, and thank you to the sponsor, ACME POCT, to have me here in this nice opportunity to share my research. And today, I'm going to briefly introduce what I'm doing in terms of research and my personal experience working with clinicians on various projects. And I want to briefly share my journey for commercialization as well. All right, before jumping into my research, I want to thank all of my group members in this picture. This is an amazing group of people, including multiple postdocs, full-time researchers, and many graduate students. So as a group, we are studying fundamentals of materials engineering, flexible mechanics, nanomanufacturing, machine learning, and system packaging. So based on that, we are developing various types of soft nanomembrane biosensors and bioelectronic systems as listed here. So these are ongoing projects that we are developing either in wearable or implantable configuration. But today, due to time limitation, let me share a few examples where we develop wearable sensor systems through collaboration with clinicians and how we can utilize them. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna share our collaboration opportunities where we're looking for more clinicians to work with. So for those of you who never heard about soft electronics, here I prepare a little photo that compares conventional rigid wearables with our soft wearables. As you see that on the wrist, this is a conventional wearable devices that people use on a daily basis. But as you know that it's made of rigid packaging, rigid materials like metals, plastics, and others. Compared to that, you see there's completely different device on the finger, which is having an exceptionally small form factor, and it's ultra thin, ultra light, and ultra breathable, and it's made of nanomaterials and soft composites, so that you can follow the morphology of the targeted substrate or surfaces. So it can be wearable like this to pick up signals from our body at a high quality with minimized motion artifacts compared to the conventional wearables. And obviously, it can provide a maximum user comfort for continuous use of this device for not only for multiple hours, but also for multiple weeks and months. Then the question is how we can design such electronics, right? There are many different strategies that we can do that. But one simple example is to play with materials. So in this picture, I'm holding a conventional rigid electronic, although it's miniaturized, it's still very rigid. But now I can change that to something like on the right-hand side in the picture, which is maintaining the same functionality because we could use same chips, microchips, as the previous speaker mentioned, with sensors. But now you see this device is soft, it's flexible and stretchable. How can we do that? We could do that by changing materials from rigid plastic to soft polymer, and from rigid metal to soft, like ultra thin nanomembrane metal, as you see from bottom left photo. So once you reduce the thickness down to nanometers, then we can dramatically reduce the bending stiffness. So this device becomes flexible without mechanical fracture. And then we can go one step further to play with this metal. Now we can make patterns on it and integrate that with soft polymers. Then we can create a soft composite, which is shown on the bottom right. Now you can accommodate stretching, bending, everything together. And even stretching, it can have autoplane buckling, so it's not gonna have mechanical fracture and still functioning at this stretching condition. So based on this strategy, we can basically develop any types of wearable sensors and electronic systems. And these are a few examples where we utilize nanomaterial printing technologies to print different types of nanomembrane sensors and integrated circuits to make an all-in-one wearable system. So once we have this system, then now we can measure various types of high quality signals from the human body So by using those signals, we can offer a portable ambulatory health monitoring. And also we can use those signals for automated quantitative disease diagnosis when we combine this system with machine learning. And you can use that for therapeutics, as I'm sharing these examples here. When we integrate our sensors with virtual reality, then we can do therapeutics as well. And lastly, by measuring physiological signals from the body, especially from brain, we can have human-machine interfaces, like brain-machine interfaces, to control external devices, hardware and software. As I'm sharing, my work is focusing on problem-driven research. So in this work, collaboration is the key. I truly believe in this power of collaboration between medicine and engineering. So that's why I work with many clinicians, so that we can identify the ongoing medical problems and unmet needs. Then based on that, we can define science and technology to develop new systems that can address those issues. And eventually, we can transfer the technology so that this device can be available in the market and for the hospitals as well. So as an example, at the moment in my group, we have about 20 funded projects. And among them, I work with many clinicians through collaboration for 18 projects, including our collaborators from Memory Medicine, CHOA, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Shriners, and others. So from now on, I'm going to share a few examples that I'm working with our collaborators. So one example is to develop cardiac health monitor that I'm working with Mike Lloyd in cardiology. So where we are developing this ultra thin integrated wearable heart monitor that can be simply mounted on the chest like this. So it looks like a Band-Aid, but it has multifunctionality. Once you look at the system, that it has multiple sensors, nanomembrane sensors that can make direct contact to the skin. And there's an integrated circuit system so that you can have wireless data acquisition through Bluetooth. And I hope you can see this video clip. So this is an example where this guy is wearing one of our devices. All right, and we are using Bluetooth to capture the electrocardiogram in real time, as you see from the top graph. And also we can measure motions, the accelerometers, and automatically we can calculate heart rate, respiration, and also based on machine learning, we can estimate activities that this guy is doing. So based on this real-time continuous health monitor, if something happened for this guy, like heart attack, heart failure, we can detect that abnormal signals in real time. And you can also detect this collapsing, right? So you can send EMS and others. That guy is acting, so no worry about that. So that's one example. The other project that we are doing is to develop sleep monitor, wearable monitor that can detect disorders and sleep quality. So we work with Ruin Mary-Trotty in Emory Sleep Medicine, where we are developing this wearable integrated single bio patch, as you can see from that person wearing that on the sternum. And this device can be mounted on the forehead as well to measure brain signals, eye motions, and blood oxygen saturation as well. So compared to the messy conventional polysomnographies that require more than 15 sensors, manifold wires, and all different tips and everything, our wearable bio patch can still measure high quality sleep stages, as you see from this graph. And based on our patient study, our device can have really good accuracy, around 82% to detect wake, NREM, and REM sleep. Obviously, we are enhancing the accuracy further. And also, this device can measure apnea and hypopnea case, more than 96% accuracy. The next project is similar to the previous speaker mentioned, but different device. Here, compared to the conventional stethoscope, we miniaturize everything together, and it's completely wireless, single device platform like this, which has an embedded digital microphone and wireless circuit with Bluetooth, everything together. And here I'm working with Dr. Lokesh Guglani in memory pulmonology, so that this device can be mounted on the chest area or backside to hear lung sounds and others. And one example here, we work with 30 patients, and we can clearly detect abnormal signals like lung disorders, including crackle, lonkai, wheeze, and stridor. And by using machine learning based on convolutional neural network, we can detect real-time abnormal signals by differentiating these disorders with accuracy about 95%. And lastly, I work with Kevin Maher, who's here today, and also Arla, his colleague at Chua Pediatrics, where we developed this ultra-thin, again, miniaturized wearable system. And now we're targeting babies and kids, right? Who are very small and they have very sensitive skin. So instead of using conventional wired and rigid, bulky electronics, we are replacing them with this ultra-thin membrane patch that can still measure high-quality physiological health-related signals in real time wirelessly, so that we are envisioning this picture to change the existing wired and multi-sensor system with tabletop data acquisition tool to something like shown on the right-hand side, single wire patch, so that parents can hold babies and kids, play with them without worrying about wires and others. So overall, based on this research, I'm personally working on this commercialization. So thus far, I founded 2 companies, Huxley Medical and Wisp Medical, as listed here. So Huxley Medical is developing home sleep monitor. So I founded this company with Brandon and Chris Lee, and we have multiple clinical collaborators, and we have funding to further develop this technology. And recently I founded a new company, Wisp Medical, which is developing a cardiac health monitor based on my cardiac sensing technologies. So currently we work with Emory Chua and also a few hospitals in South Korea. They are the biggest hospitals, including Seoul National University, Yonsei, Asan, and others. And during this process, I learned a lot of things, but I'm still working on it. I'm trying to find the right partners to work with and find all possible resources to keep developing this system. I believe this is my last slide due to time limitation. So currently I'm looking for new collaboration. So first example, here we are developing this wearable stress monitor that can be mounted on the wrist, wrist area, unlike the conventional finger wearable devices. So here we can use this stress monitor to measure galvanic skin response, electrical activities, or continuous data recording, so that you can connect that with stress alleviation and see what happens. Another example is to develop this brain monitor, so that you can pick up EEG from scalp. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, we can use that for brain machine interfaces or for diagnostics and others. And also my group is working on implantable system. Here, this device can be delivered through catheter, blood vessel for measuring hemodynamics and others. Most recently, we developed this pediatric electro monitor. We call it a smart pathfinder. As you see that it's different from conventional one, where we can measure electrolyte from saliva, like sodium and potassium. And lastly, we are making this EMG monitor thing that can measure signals from human body, also from animal models. So if you're interested in those projects, please let me know. I'm very open to any collaboration, as I mentioned earlier. You can email me, or you can see my website to see the details of our recent work. And at the end, I'm very thankful for my research sponsors. And thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Hong. That was really fantastic. So this is Greg, and I just take a few minutes to moderate what you just described, which is really amazing. So thank you for sharing all the innovation and the breadth of what you've accomplished. So I would encourage people, use the Q&A, put in your questions. I would certainly love to hear questions about this presentation, but also a variety of clinical applications, because we saw a lot of different areas there where there's potential niche areas that really could be developed. And certainly as a pulmonologist and intensivist, I can see a lot of what you described. I wonder, let me start. So there is one question from Uzma in the Q&A area. So his question is about how are the devices powered? solar or biomechanical energy harvesting, if you want to address that one first, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see something on this slide. Each device has a silver-like thing in the embedded system, which is a rechargeable battery. That's something that we're using at the moment. It's a lithium polymer battery, so that we can recharge the system after 1 day use or multiple days, depending on the power consumption that each device requires. That's typical device that we use for Bluetooth-enabled wearable systems. But for implantable systems shown on the bottom left, we use inductive coupling, which is passive wireless, so it doesn't require any circuits or batteries. We use electromagnetic coupling with external antenna, so this device doesn't have anything like that, but it has a limited wireless communication range. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for that, Hong. And I particularly am fascinated by the breadth of what you described, where you're monitoring heart, lung, brain, sleep, eyes. I mean, there's a variety of things that you could do here. So I would encourage anyone, any questions, and particularly the clinicians in the crowd, if you can think of applications where you've had a challenge or something that you can imagine where Hong's technologies might really play a role or could be pivoted to work in an area that you're where you found a clinical challenge. Maybe
Right.
to sort of that point, if you have, Hong, if you have, you've developed a lot of collaboration. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that's worked in terms of, are there things that the clinician would need to bring to the table? Is it sort of just bringing the clinical question, and what do you need from them in order to really shepherd this and be successful?
Yeah, I was very lucky to meet with this fantastic global clinicians, collaborators, including Kevin Meyer and others. I met them through conferences, workshops, or seminars like this. Georgia Tech has great opportunities to share our research. So that's how I met them, and also somebody introduced as well. So I hope you guys can think of someone else, then please share this, something that I'm doing. And what is your next question? The second question?
Yeah, I was there is a question in the chat, but mostly my question was about as you're developing a new relationship with a clinician who maybe has an idea or a concept or at least a clinical problem. It sounds like certainly what you've shown is you've developed using nanomembranes and wearable technologies and implantable devices, a variety of different ways to help address that. And I guess I was asking for the clinicians in the crowd, are there particular things beyond just the idea or the concept that they need to bring or would help you to?
Oh yeah,
successful?
yeah, right, yeah. So again, some of these projects are definitely coming from clinicians only. I never thought about it. So I, for the example that I show you at the last minute, the wearable pacifier thing, right? I never thought about that, but someone asked me whether that's possible from the pediatric standpoint, who's working in NICU. So that's how we created this idea and developed system together. So anything, any idea, any clinical problems, if you can think of, it doesn't need to be limited to wearable or the devices that I shared today. Just let me know. I'll be happy to discuss with you and try to find solutions so that we can help patients.
Yeah, and so for those that are on, Hong's email address is right there at the top. So the other question in the chat is about how you do the validation steps. If you're developing devices, what are the things that you think of in terms of validating or working, I guess, validating towards the clinical arena, validating their functionality? Yeah.
That's a great question, right? We're trying to follow the conventional gold standard detection method. That's why we are doing, let's say, for example, for sleep monitoring devices, we are validating our system with conventional PSG polysomnography so that we can have side-to-side comparison, right? I think that's the most convincing way to convince people that this device is actually working, right? So that at the moment, that's what we are trying to follow. For implantable devices, we work with animal models. So currently we work with rabbits and mice and other things to validate how our system works.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're working from the technology moving into animals before you get into humans, and it's a great way to model it and make the improvements.
Right.
So I know we're just down to the last minute or so. Stacy may want to finish things up, close it, and make sure we've got our surveys and everything available. So Hong, if you, I was gonna say, if you want to stop sharing, and then if people have other questions, certainly continue the conversation, put it into the Q&A, and then we'll keep people connected afterwards. Stacy, what else do we have?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Greg, and to our wonderful speakers and very esteemed moderators. Again, this was very rapid pace. We want to make sure we can continue the conversation. And so we encourage everyone to respond to the survey, to let us know what you liked about today, what you want to hear more about, what you want to hear different. And then also give us your name and your email address. And we are planning on scheduling some additional sessions after this to get into more deep dive conversations about these very topics. So with that, we will close out. This is when you would normally in person hear great applause, I have no doubt. So thank you, though. I really appreciate everyone's involvement and contribution and participation today, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stacy.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hong. Thank you,
Thanks.
Farouk.
Thank